will be joining us. So my name's Maeve Connolly, and this is Aisling Conville, who is one of the ARC students and is our student rep and has very kindly agreed to help out and answer questions that on the student experience. So I'm the co-chair of the ARC program, and I've been involved in running the program or co-organizing the program for a very long time. And my colleague Sinead Hogan and I sort of do a lot of the organization of the program. We teach on it. We have other colleagues as well. David Beattie, an artist that some of you might know, Maria McKinney, another artist that some of you might know. And we have quite a lot of visiting lecturers as well. But basically, the program has been running in its current form. It's been running since around 2014, but it has a prehistory with a slightly different title, but a very similar focus, MA in Visual Arts Practices, and it was set up initially in 2004. So it has been, we're nearly coming to 20 years of this postgrad program, which is actually amazing to think of. So I don't know if you can see, I hope you can see the background is the IDT campus. So some of you may know the campus, you may not know the campus, I'm not sure, but basically our program is a little bit different from some of the other IDT postgrad programs in that it's not actually fully based on campus. In fact, it's based in the lab, which is the Dublin City Arts Office space that is on Foley Street in Dublin 1, so not too far from Connolly Station. And it's that city centre location is pretty important to the design of the programme because it allows us to facilitate students travelling from outside Dublin as well as those who are based in Dublin. So that's quite important, and we have had students attend the programme very successfully from Belfast, from Cork, from Dublin, from the Midlands. It makes it very accessible. But obviously the campus is a great resource as well, and our students do have full access to the resources on the campus. So I think there's a lot of information that some of you may know already, but there's also perhaps some questions that you have. So I think you may have already been advised this, but we'd like you to put your questions into the chat, if possible. And what we're going to do is kind of keep an eye on questions, and maybe I'll talk through a few elements of our program website, which I'll share, and then I'll exit out of that, and we'll just pick up if there are questions in the chat. And I would also say that this is a great opportunity for you to have questions for Aisling in terms of the student experience, but also if there's a question that you need to follow up on, I'm very available. I'm happy to respond to people by email. My email is like very widely accessible on the IDT website and on the ARC program website. So I frequently talk to applicants before they apply because they have questions that are quite detailed and specific. So that's something I like to do. I'm very happy to chat to people, either doing a Zoom call or chat on the phone or just respond by email. So I'm very keen to be in touch with people if they have questions. It's obviously not required, but it's definitely something that we would really welcome. One of the things that I think is maybe useful is to know that we ask students to develop a proposal for the program. And we have quite a bit of information on the website about what's in a proposal, but often people do need to think, they do have questions that really are quite particular and distinctive because their own proposal focus might be very specific to them. So those kinds of questions, they might be a bit too detailed to put into the chat, but if you want to follow up with me on those by email, that's totally fine with me. So I don't see any questions as yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the program website and hopefully not share lots of the wrong things. So I'm just going to minimize this. Actually, I'll keep it over here. So the program website, it's arciadt.ie. It's sort of a very good resource for us in terms of gathering information about the program, about what our students are doing, and we use it quite actively. It has a lot of information that is kind of relevant for applicants. So I'm just going to navigate through a few sections and then I'll come back to the chat. So we have an About ARC section, which gives some general information. I mean, this is a website that we manage ourselves. It's not a hugely kind of detailed website. I'm just checking actually that people can.
Yeah, we're able to see it absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting some kind of issue with the website, which is not ideal. So a problem loading the page, which wasn't there before, but this is a classic Teams experience. Okay, no, it's back. Okay, I did recently update it, so that could be an issue. So the module content, this is important to people usually. They want to know some practical things about the program. So I hope you can see module content and frequently asked questions. And we've kind of assembled this over the years, responding to the questions we've had. So students usually want, or applicants usually want to know practically what do they need to commit in terms of time. So our program it's a master's. You complete 90 credits. You complete 60 of those credits in year one. And you can see here, I hope you can see, it says Thursdays, 10 to 5 p.m., October to May. So it's a very full teaching day. And I think Aisling could probably attest to that, that it's a busy and intense day. And it's, it's a full day of teaching with just a short break for lunch. And then in the second year, you complete 30 credits. And the second year is a shorter, it's really just one term. So it's Fridays rather than Thursdays in the second year, and it's 10 to 1 p.m. And actually, we usually check with students. Sometimes it is proved logistically better to run it from 11 to 2 p.m., depending on where people are traveling from. And we did make some changes to facilitate people because of, where, their journeys were a bit longer. So this is just a list of the modules and the different modules you complete. There are 6 modules in total. So you do 3 modules in the first term and 2 in the second term. And then in year 2, when you come back after the summer break, you complete the final module. But I think the key thing is that all of the modules in a way connect to your project, and this is the project that you apply to the program with, your project proposal. So it's designed to support your learning and your progression. And when people apply with a proposal, they usually identify something that is a specific concern for them. And sometimes people will have, if they're applying, with an art project, an art making project, they usually, they may just want to develop a new body of artwork. Sometimes they might have a curatorial focus, so they might want to develop a curatorial research towards maybe putting together an exhibition of work by others. Or they might want to develop something that has, it could have an educational focus. It could be a piece of writing. It could be a piece of research. So we usually have between 10 and 12 students on the program in the first year, and kind of around the same, maybe slightly fewer in the second year. And they all will have very different projects. And I will, in a few minutes, kind of navigate to the section of the website to see where there's a bit of information about the current students' projects. So basically, these are the modules in the first term. We're unusual as an MA program in that we don't have an academic dissertation. So our students don't have to write a thesis. They do produce a piece of academic research in the form of an essay on a topic that is their choice, and it's generally related to their project research area. And they develop they develop a kind of an academic set of skills. Some of them may already be very confident with essay writing and using academic resources. Some of them may not, but they get a lot of support to build those skills. We have a professional development element, which is really important, where we support students to identify funding or other types of professional supports that are really relevant to them, and we help them to make an application. Now, it's a mock application, but in some cases, people might actually submit the application for real, and we have had people be successful with securing funding. So it's very good to be able to get feedback. Many people have had the experience of applying for funding, but they haven't always been successful. And they get a lot of guidance from visiting lecturers who have very direct experience of either applying for funding or maybe awarding funding. So they get to see it from a few different sides, and they build up more confidence and more expertise in that. And then we have what would be the kind of core element of the program, which is weekly tutorials to help everybody develop their own self-directed art research project. So when we use the word art research, we really use it very broadly. So research for some people might be investigation into materials, or it might be developing, a script for a performance, or it might be, research in a more academic mode, but it's very particular to each student and each project. So the project plan, though, is really about making sure that the project ideas that people apply with, that they can be realized and that people can move ahead with making their projects happen. And thinking about, practically, what do they need to put in place? What do they need to learn? What do they need to test? And then in the second term, we move through that testing in a more focused way. So we have a module called external collaboration, which involves group collaboration. It's individually assessed, but the students work together, and they work with an organization. And they can either work with an organization that they've decided to connect with themselves, or they can work together with the lab, which is an important partner organization for us. So actually, our students tomorrow have an event happening, which I will show you some information on the website about that, because you're very welcome to it. It's a public event that's happening at the lab in our usual teaching space from 2 to 5 in the afternoon. So that is a great opportunity if you can come along. I know it's pretty short notice, but if you can come along, meet me, meet the students, we'd be very happy to kind of talk to you about what the projects are. And we often do sort of, we have this very good city centre teaching space, and we like to use it as much as possible. So we have a lot of collaboration with the lab. It's a really important partner organisation for us. So with this term, in this second term, that group of students, they're getting some advice and some guidance on how to organize an event practically, but they're also developing their own individual projects and moving those projects forward. So they're really testing them in a more kind of robust way, and that takes different forms for different projects. And then over the summer, the students don't have any classes. They can continue to use the campus facilities. So I did mention that the campus facilities are available, and what that basically means is studios where work can be set up, it can be tested, it can be constructed. Some students use the campus a lot, some don't. There's a lot of facilities like the print room, there's kilns, there's woodwork and metalwork. There's quite big sort of spaces to set things up. There's photography studios. There's a lot of different facilities, and we often give people tours of the campus if they're interested, and that's something that I'd be happy to do as well. It's a good opportunity to come out and visit the campus, maybe to see the undergraduate students exhibition. That could be interesting, but actually, there's lots of reasons to visit the campus outside of that, just to see what's out there. And the during the summer, the students who want to use the campus studios, they can put together a small proposal. It's very basic, and it's sort of a formality, and they can use the studios over the summer months, and then that means they can kind of continue working on the project. So they don't have classes, and it's completely optional. But it's a great opportunity for some people, because depending on what what your lifestyle is and your commitments and your responsibilities, you might have more time over the summer. So that's something that lots of our students have found really useful. So yeah, I think I might exit out if I don't lose my way in Teams, which I tend to do. So I'm going to just check the chat.
Yeah, just one quick question there.
Yeah.
I was going to, what did most students in art study for their undergrad?
Ooh, good question. Well, I would say probably more than 50% would have an undergraduate degree in art. But there are lots of students who have a different type of undergraduate degree. We've had students who've done computer science, they've done literature, they've done art history, they've done maybe film. We've had students who came from agriculture, and we've had students come from, yeah, it's pretty much all over. I don't really, we've had mostly people from arts and humanities, but we have had people from sciences. And we've had, I think, going back a bit further, we had people come from physics a few years in the slightly earlier history of the program. So it's really, really diverse. We've had people do from engineering, from sociology. What I would say is that if somebody is interested in applying to the program to make artworks, but their undergraduate degree is not in art and is in something like, agriculture or computer science, we would sort of want to get a sense of what are the works that they have made. So they would need to have some track record of making artworks. So that's what the proposal would show us. They would give us a sense of what are the skills that they have. And many people might have art as a hobby, but they haven't had any experience of exhibiting, or they haven't had any experience equivalent to an art undergraduate degree of, taking part in critiques and tutorials. So they may be quite self-taught. So that's not necessarily a barrier, but it does mean that we kind of need to see what level of experience they have. So if you have a degree in a different discipline, like a degree in engineering or degree in physics or whatever, you are qualified and eligible for the program, but the you're eligible to apply, but we sort of assess and evaluate the applications based on the proposals. So we would need to see in the proposal what is it you want to do, and our program, because it's postgraduate, assumes a certain level of skill. So if you were proposing, for example, a drawing project, but you had no experience of drawing, then we would say probably it's better to do an undergraduate degree and build up your drawing skills. But if you could show that you had lots of experience of drawing and you had lots of skill with drawing, then that would be a different situation. So that's why, as part of the proposal, you would include documentation of your artwork if you're applying to do an art project. So, are there any other questions, or was that the only one? Okay, so I'm going to go back in and just tell you a little bit about the event that's happening tomorrow, because it's quite interesting. So we have a kind of news section of the website where we post stuff about what students are at. So this is an event called proscenium, which is a kind of an interesting word that we came up with as a group. It does exist. It relates to a particular type of theatrical stage and the kind of architecture of the stage. So what we're calling a research rehearsal, and that's happening tomorrow 2 to 5 p.m. So do come along. So there's lots of things happening in this event. It just gives you a sense maybe of the very wide range of types of projects that students actually have. So we're going to have some displays of work in progress. So this is, artwork that's not finished in most cases. It's, sort of draft, early stage versions of work. We're going to have some participatory activities, and we're going to have some short presentations. So one of our students is working on a very well, it's quite a playful script for a sitcom, and a very early stage. So some of us are taking on different roles in this sitcom, and it's called Video Ape. I don't really want to give the game away, but it's kind of absurd, quite kind of darkly funny, family situation. So it's a situation comedy. So an old format, but he's developing that, and we're going to have a read through of some scenes from this sitcom. We have another project that deals with the swimming pool as a kind of cultural phenomenon, with this particular aesthetic and particular sets of behaviors. So that's something that I think you can probably kind of get the suggestion of that from the our image of the lovely Diana Carter appearing from the swimming pool there. So that's yeah, that's two of the events, and we also have a student who has a background in actually in industrial design, so that's interesting. And she has been working on a graphic novel which focuses on the phenomenon of aphantasia, which is a kind of sort of neurological or neurodevelopmental phenomenon, quite newly identified, which is experienced by people who don't have internal mental images. So quite interesting. She's going to talk about that. We also have a colouring book project, sort of an adult colouring book that has been developed by another student, which sort of retells in a very sort of gothic way some of the Grimm's fairy tales. So it's quite mixed, and we also have uh, uh, projects, including Ashling's work, that deal with more environmental and ecological themes, looking at uh, aspects of the bogland environment in particular, experiments with natural dyes, another project, and locally sourced materials. And I would say that actually environmental or place sensitive or place responsive projects have probably become more common in the program, but it's not, definitely not by any means the focus of the program, but it's definitely something that students have been drawn towards in different ways. We have a project that's dealing with what's called vulval pride. So it's kind of playful. But it's also serious in that it's dealing with sort of identity issues and coming from a feminist perspective. But also the student who's making this costume has worked for a long time in costume design for stage and screen, so is moving into an art field with a lot of those skills and knowledges that are from a slightly different field. And then we also have a more sort of formal installation project dealing with found objects. So even I think within that, those 8 students, there are like quite a diverse array of of concerns, and that is something that would be typical for the program, that we would always have quite a range of different interests. And I suppose, Aisling, maybe it's something that I could ask you, if that's, because you're coming from an art background, and there are people in the group who maybe have a different background. I guess it would be interesting to get your perspective, if how you found those kinds of conversations with people from maybe different perspectives. Is that something that you enjoy, or? Oh, microphone. Ashley, your microphone.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Maeve. Very much so. I come from a teaching background. I was teaching for many years, and I returned to do the master's, um, and it was actually really lovely to be and now interact and be friends with a group of people that are very different from myself, both in age, in what they practice, where they're from, and it just feeds into your own practice and outlook. Um, so I suppose when we meet up every week, we've got to know each other better and better. And tomorrow, the test event is really an accumulation of our experience so far. And I think we're all very proud of each other. I think, we've communicated really well with each other. Um, it might seem like it's not a final show, but actually the work that goes into it is quite rigorous, and the preparation. So it's really lovely to build a bond with so many different people. And plus, kind of relating it back to art experiences, um, to listen to each other speak and to listen how other people talk about their artwork, it massively informs your own thinking and how you approach your practice. So yeah, I our students at the minute are very diverse, I would say, and that's only really added to the program.
That's great, Ashling. I think it's really true. And I personally really enjoy the fact that there are people of very different ages and very different backgrounds in the program. And I think even though it's always a smallish group, and you might have a larger group might start at the beginning of the year, and there might be people who have to make changes because of financial issues or life issues, and that does happen. It's probably been more of an issue in the past few years with COVID and stuff. People have to kind of sometimes take a break and come back in, and that's something we can facilitate really well. And I think that we've found that even within a small group, there's really great camaraderie, and there's also really nice conversations with people from different places. So I would say the majority are people who are Irish or have lived in Ireland for a long time, but we often have people who are joining the program from very different parts of the world. We had a very international group last year, probably slightly less international this year, but certainly we still have perspectives and insights from people who or who haven't lived in Ireland for a long time. And it's really interesting to get their perspective. And also, I think it's really good for them to be able to come in and really be part of a network that is very embedded. And I think that the peer learning aspect of the program, I really value it. I feel I learn a lot from the students every year, and I feel like the students, they always learn more from each other than they do from the lecturing staff, and we know that. So we do have quite a lot of emphasis on discussion. There are lectures, but I would say that quite a lot of the content of the program is students developing, presenting their work, sharing material that they've been looking at. I think that becomes particularly more of the program in the second term, and certainly in the major project. I think we start the program the first term with the lecturing staff giving quite a lot of content, but gradually I think the balance tips a little bit more towards the students kind of sharing their insights and their learning. And I think it's always the case that there'll be someone on the program who has huge amount of skill in some area that others don't have. Like it might be a particular craft skill, it might be that they're just a really great writer, or it might be that they're a natural performer, or it might be that they're just an amazing organizer. And there's always an interesting mix of skills, and people are very generous and very good at learning from each other and contributing and sharing. And we don't kind of have kind of group assessment. People are still assessed individually, but we do find that people work really well on these shared goals and shared objectives, especially if it's in a public facing event or something that has a definite outcome that everybody's invested in and is learning a lot. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering if there are any more questions. I think Orla is typing, but I don't know if there is another question. Oh yeah, a question. Oh, what was your experience with IDT? Ashling, that's for you.
Thank you. My experience has been really positive. I came into IADT specifically wanting, I suppose, a space to work in, and I was granted that space, and I think um, I reveled in what I could do in that space, as in the materials that were available to me, and the I suppose the knowledge from the technicians that were on site. So that was really important for me in the first couple of months. Um, moving on from there, it was lovely to be on site, and then for every week to be able to go into the city centre and be able to go to the lab. The lab gives you a sense that you are in a way part of the art world, and I think that's really important, purely because you are able to leave the lab and you're able to go and visit other exhibitions that may be on, so you can dedicate time in the week to that. Um, what else? Everyone is very open. If there's any questions, communication is clear and concise. Um, Actually, I really have to say it's very clear, concerning whether it's work that's due or spaces that maybe you want to use, how we upkeep, how we run things. There's a definite structure to the course, and yeah, that's.
Thanks, Sasha.
I'm able to answer
Great.
anything else if it's possibly more specific as well. Yeah.
I see there's a question about in the lab, is there an emphasis on tutorial or purely individual casual meeting? Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Because it's a taught master's, so it's not a research master's in the sense that people, you have to complete these credits, you have to complete the modules. So it is not casual. I mean, it is not formal, it's friendly, but it is structured. So our timetable, and there is an indicative timetable on the website, and you can have people can have a look for it. There's a link to it in the program information section. You can see that on the Thursdays we are completing the 3 modules in the first term. So the day will be broken up into different slots. So part of the day, basically the Thursday mornings in the first term, will be the art research methods, which is a lecture seminar, and there are readings and there are assignments. And then the afternoons, we're either doing the professional development sessions, or we're doing the project plan, and we distribute the schedule. We actually usually distribute an indicative schedule to people when they're accepted onto the program. So in June, we interview applicants, and if they're accepted, we send them the indicative schedule, which has the holidays and has the deadlines. It has the assessments dates, and that schedule is kind of color coded. I've tried to make it as clear as possible, so people can see what are the modules, when are the modules happening, how much time do they take up, where are they happening, are they in the lab, or some sessions might be on campus, and also you can see the shift from the modules in term 1 to the modules in term 2. But on the Thursday, you will see that the Thursday will invariably be a mix of the 3 modules, but it will be very clear we're finishing one session and we're moving now to another session. We might have different staff, we might have occasional days where we might do maybe a project plan session all day, which would allow us to have a very detailed deep dive into the works, but it is very planned and structured, and it's busy. It's quite an intense day, and I think that is something that we kind of recognize, that the feedback from us has been that they find the first term not overwhelming, but intense. But I think by the time it gets to the second term, people have kind of, it's almost like going back to the gym. People are like, their kind of student muscles are really kind of honed, and they're well able for the pace, and the pace gets a little bit less intense in the second term because it's only 2 modules, not 3. So I'm seeing more questions there, and I'm going to go back. So I think Helen had a question, the reality of time that students and dedicate each week to the course. Okay, that's a very good and practical question. So what I would say is it depends on your proposal. So if you're proposing to make a very large body of new artworks that are very time consuming to make, you would have to be able to allocate quite a lot of your evenings or weekends. If you're also going to do a paid job, that would be challenging. So, but we have certainly had students in the past who have paid work, and that is, can be onerous, and they are juggling quite a lot of time commitments. And we always say to people, if they apply to the course, that they know that there's going to be this 18 months that's quite busy. Now, the summer is a break. We don't assign any work during the summer. But it is intense. So yes, you would be able to work. We all of our students, do paid work. There's almost nobody who doesn't need to do that. So yes, you can work. The schedule is sent out really early, so you can see exactly what you need to do in terms of your assignments, and you have a sense of when it's going to be busy and when it's not busy. There is a busy point when we have the major project exhibition, which used to be in January, but is now in December. And there will be a couple of weeks leading up to that where we would say to people, if possible, try to prioritize your student work when you're getting ready for the exhibition. And I think anyone who comes from an art background probably knows that. If you've ever made work for an exhibition, you would know that. But if you're very new to art, you might not quite realize that. But we do try to advise people on that. So yeah, I think it's a kind of there's a bit of balancing, but we have had people sort of pursuing a curatorial project. For example, we've had people who are full-time arts officers who negotiated one day out of their full-time job to attend classes, and they completed the program successfully. They would have been quite busy in their weekends and evenings on their coursework. Okay, so someone has asked a question, Fanula, would IDT potentially accept a BSc background and art portfolio for the master's? Good question. I did indicate, yes, we would consider it. I can't say we would accept it, but we would consider the portfolio. Basically, if there's a proposal and then there's evidence of related work completed, then we can definitely consider it. And as I mentioned at the beginning, everyone needs to submit a proposal as part of their application. And if you're proposing to make artworks, we need to see evidence that you have previously made artworks. We need to see documentation of those. And then we would interview and establish kind of a sense of what your skill background is. And but yes, we have had people come through a non-art route into the program. That has been the case in the past. So I think there's another question maybe appearing, or someone's typing. So yeah, I mean, I would think that it's quite useful to look at the information on our social media. We have a pretty reasonably active Instagram, and also I do update the website with profiles from time to time. I need to do a bit more of that of students. You can see that people's knowledges and people's projects actually come from quite a lot of different disciplines, and actually I think that is really important. So we often think of the program as supporting people to be in conversation with other disciplines. Sometimes they're embedded within art and the conversation is directed kind of elsewhere, or sometimes they're embedded in another area and they're kind of engaging with art. So we had a very interesting graduate a few years ago who had a kind of medical devices background, and she made these beautiful sculptural objects, but was really drawing on her knowledge of medical devices. So she would have had a more science-based background, but she she had a lot of different types of knowledge that were really fascinating to us, and she was able to, I think, develop a very good vocabulary to speak about her practice. And I think Aisling mentioned that as well, this kind of thing about communicating. Everyone communicates differently about their work, but it's a really important thing to, I suppose, to get confident in developing a language that you feel comfortable with, but that does communicate for you. And I mean, I know we had those sessions that were really interesting about developing statements in the first term. It's quite a challenging thing, but I think it's beneficial if you have a group of people with different backgrounds and different interests, because you sort of have to sort of find a common language. So I don't know,
Yeah,
what would you think about that?
we'll probably just top up on that. That's one thing about the course that has been stated amongst the other students as well, that definitely from the get-go there is a focus on introducing yourself over and over and over again, and which means that you also have to discuss your practice, and this is something that really over time, I suppose, develops your confidence and your fluency within your, talking about your own practice. And it's something that really has helped me it kind of helps you realize and figure out, I suppose, and iron out different areas in which you're not too sure about. And I think building upon that confidence is so important. And I think that particularly the ARC course is very good at doing this. There is definitely a lot of focus on that, Niamh, isn't there?
There
Yeah.
is, and that such
Yeah.
task of asking people to repeatedly introduce themselves, often it feels like a really mean thing to get people to do, especially when we say, well, 5 minutes introduce yourself, or in one sentence introduce yourself, and it's a sort of very tough at first, but people get so much better at it so quickly.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And that will often happen if we have a visiting lecturer who might, for example, be a curator. And a curator, actually, they would be quite good at absorbing quite a lot of information quickly, because that's often what they do. They're doing studio visits, they're in professional situations where they're being introduced to people, and very quickly getting a sense of what that person's practice is. But there are always people who will not feel that their verbal articulation is the best presentation of their work. And we do recognize that, the work should do the talking, but it is important for people to, even just to be able to, in a friendly and confident and relaxed way, to just introduce themselves. And they may not want to say very much about the work, but even to be able to introduce themselves, or where they're coming from, or what their focus is, it is really good. It does get easier with practice. So yeah, I'd see another question I'm going to pick up on, which is from Niamh. Niamh, I would say that's a detailed question. I would actually encourage you to email me, because it would be good, maybe for me to give some direct advice on that one. Basically, the proposal, there's some guidance on the website about putting together proposal. It's also on the course page on the IDT website, so it's not hard to find. But if you do have difficulty, please do email me. But you would put your proposal together as a sort of PDF document and upload it, and so that can include quite a lot of images, and it can include text as well as images. I do think it's always a good idea to add captions or some text with images. Often images alone don't communicate as much as you might think. But if that's not enough information, Niamh, just do email me. And sometimes people might say, I really am stumped about the proposal. I don't quite know how to do this, especially if they haven't done anything like that before. So I can sometimes give people very specific advice, if it certainly eases our task of assessing applications if the applicants have understood the guidance. So if you're not clear on the guidance, we can give you more information, and we can support you, and just answer any questions that you have, so that you're not sort of submitting something that isn't what we need, because it doesn't help anybody if that's the case. So yeah. I would say also there is something, I don't know if this applies to anybody here, but there is a recognition of prior learning route into the program. So if someone doesn't have a BA, but has, for example, lots and lots of professional experience in a field that is relevant to their proposal, we can consider that. So there's some information on the IDT website about that route. Yeah. So yeah, basically, Niamh, you can contact me if you need more, and we can have a chat about it. But yeah, we don't. It's not the case that everybody has to have an undergraduate degree. If they have equivalent professional experience, like say 4 years of professional experience, there is a process. Now, it is a formal process, and it involves evaluation with our head of department, but we have successfully brought people through that process on a number of occasions, and it has been really positive, especially if someone's someone doesn't have a third level qualification, or didn't complete a third level qualification. Sometimes people might have studied in another field and they didn't complete their final degree, so they kind of almost qualified, but not quite. So there is flexibility around that. And that's a process where, putting together a proposal there's sort of an extra bit of work that they need to do, but it's doable. Okay, so great. I don't know if there are more questions, but I might just briefly go back into the website to see if there's anything else that is worth highlighting just on the website, because it's not super intuitive in terms of design. It is a WordPress website. So yeah, there's the module content section. There's a section on that, if you go through this menu of ARC major projects, it gives you a sense of the types of projects people have completed before. It gives sort of a bit of information about the prehistory. There's a lengthy list of alumni, and I mean the program has been in existence in these various forms for quite some time. This is a kind of huge long page. So it gives you all of the graduates of the, and some of these are active with web links, which possibly are not all current, but give you their names. Also, so the precursor to ARC was MA in Visual Arts Practices. And there's a long list of people. So some of them are very well-known artists, and also curators. We have a very sort of impressive list of graduates who have gone on to kind of direct major institutions, which is brilliant. And it is an important network for us. So the alumni network is something that we maintain because I've taught on the program since the beginning. I know everybody who's done the program, and we do keep in touch. So, we do these news posts, but also we circulate information to our alumni network to kind of keep people in the loop about what we're up to. We also have, this is not very active at the moment, but we do actually have a kind of what we'd call an imprint. We have published some publications, and that does not look very active there. Publications, oh, there it is. So they're a little bit out of date now, but we have made some publications to go with exhibitions that the students have done, but also some projects that were in autonomously kind of led by students that we published. And that's quite interesting, I think, to have publishing as something that could be an outcome for some people. So it's not the case that everybody's work kind of makes the most sense in an exhibition. It might make sense in a publication. And we have some information on contributors. Oh, this is an old picture of me with out-of-date hair. But anyway, that's not very up to date. So and the applying to ARC information is kind of duplicated. It's there in a few different ways. So that's probably it for the website, but there's a fair bit of detail there in terms of the previous projects of students. If you wanted to have a look, I think that could be useful for people to see just the very wide range of projects that people have done. So I think we're kind of coming near the end. We've got a few minutes left. If anyone has a question for myself or Aisling, we can, happy to answer it. I wonder if there's big things I'm overlooking. Hard to know. Certainly, just also with the interviews. So we interview all we interview eligible applicants. We have it's a very relaxed interview. We actually tend now to use Zoom for the interviews because it suits people in terms of travel, and we make sure that people kind of can ask questions at the interview as well. So it's not just us asking questions, it's a conversation. We have some standard questions, they're very general, and then we make sure that people can ask questions of us if there's something that they need to know about the program. And it certainly makes sense for us to be as open as possible about what we need and what the course is, because what we don't want is someone applying and being accepted onto the program when we can't support the project. So one of the things that might happen if somebody applies with a proposal that is very focused on a particular technical facility, if we don't have that facility at IDT, we would say to them, look, I often used to use glass as an example and say we don't really have glass making facilities at IDT. So if you've got a glass focused project, but apparently we now do have some glass facilities. So I don't know what are the things that we wouldn't be able to support. But okay, so Fionnuala, is fine art a suitable project area for the MA? Yeah, I mean, I suppose art is the kind of major focus. So when you say fine art, I'm not sure if that is more specific than art. I mean, certainly painting, printmaking, sculpture, these are all sort of areas that people would be working on. So someone could apply with a very formal project, like, could be producing abstract paintings. There's a really great show at the moment by Orla Whelan at Hillsborough Fine Art, who was a graduate of our program from quite a few years ago, but she makes these really exquisite abstract paintings and some sculptural works as well. And, you know, Orla participated very much in our program. So yeah, so absolutely we can support and welcome those kinds of projects. And we've had, you know, people who had an entirely sculpture focused practice, and we don't have you know, a preconception about what the content of the work might be. Like, we don't expect people to be, for example, dealing with issues in their work or dealing with political or kind of social issues, but some people might be, but that's not what we require. It's definitely not a prerequisite. We also don't expect that people are producing work that is, you know, in any particular medium. As I said, if their concern was very much with a technique or material or facility we just simply didn't have access to, if they had access to it, that would be fine. So if somebody applied wanting to make a lot of work dealing with a technique or a material that they had a home studio, for example, or they had, you know, a glass kiln, then we could say, yeah, sure, we'll support you with what we can bring, you know, the professional development, the kind of conversations, the networks, the kind of research skills. So yeah, it's just to make sure that the project can happen, and then it can happen in a way that everyone is going to be, you know, going to get what they want from the program. So it's really important for us that people have a positive experience, because actually all of our recruitment, you know, well, perhaps not all of it now, because we get a lot of support from marketing, and there's been a lot of really good promotion of the program internationally in particular. But a lot of people who applied for the program within Ireland, it's word of mouth. So they've talked to someone who's done the course. So we really want to make sure that someone who applies with the project, that we can help them bring that project through to completion. That's really the kind of priority for us. Yeah, so I think that's kind of it. I'm getting a lot of little messages from teams saying our meeting is nearly over, and I don't want to kind of be chopped off mid-sentence, because I am a bit of a talker, as you've probably noticed. So Orla, I guess, are we wrapping up in a minute?
Well, we can wrap up whenever you think you'd like to finish. I think we can extend it beyond the time. I can do that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think we'll probably, if the final questions, pop them in the chat, and then we will wrap up, because as I said, I'm happy to follow up with people afterwards by making arrangement by email to have a phone or a Zoom conversation. But I want to let Aisling go because it is evening.
That's
We're
okay.
all
I
busy.
suppose just before we all go, I just a final note to say that I feel very supported on the course, and I think as an artist, that's one of the most important things. And yeah, supported but also stretched. There you go.
That's nice. I think
Yeah.
that's nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it's a really, I think it's really enjoyable. I think it's a real privilege actually to be able to teach a postgrad level. I mean, I also do teach on the undergraduate program, which I enjoy, but it's great to be able to see people really progress these really ambitious and complex and rich projects that are so different from each other. I think that's really exciting actually, and actually they do come together. We had a really good group exhibition at the lab in January of very different projects, and yet there was a conversation between them, and that happened really organically. And there's some documentation actually on the website about that. You might have to search for it, but that was called a perambulation, which is one of these odd words that we came up with through, you know, conversation, which is sort of about a journey, a mapping that you do on foot around a piece of land or territory. And that was a really interesting discovery, that there was so much common ground between the practices that were really very different and dealt with very different ideas of and experiences of territory. So that was good, and it was very rewarding to see that actually evolve as an exhibition, and something that I think you know, everybody who was involved working with the students on that was really happy with the end result. So yeah, really exciting. So okay, I don't see any more questions. I'm a bit of a stickler for timekeeping as well. I think you'll be aware of this. I'm often the one looking at the clock, partly because we do have these busy Thursdays. We want to make sure that we get time for lunch and that we finish on time, because people have busy lives and things that they need to do elsewhere. Okay, so yeah, it's really enjoyable and nice to get lots of questions from people, and I hope it was a useful session. And I really appreciate the marketing team organizing this as well. It's a good idea, a good kind of COVID dividend that we now have these virtual sessions that we can use.
Yeah, it's always good to have people be able to interact one-on-one. So thank you everyone for taking the time in your evening to come and talk with Maeve and Aisling. And thank you, Maeve and Aisling, for your time as well.
Fantastic. Okay. I'm gonna sign off. I don't know if it's up to me to leave, but I'm going to leave. So okay.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll end the meeting in about a minute. But yeah, again, thank you everyone for your time. And if you have any more questions, you can follow up at my email at info@idt.ie. And I don't know, do you want to give your email, Maeve?
Yeah, my email is I can type my email in actually before we get chopped off. So it's the standard format for all of the IDT emails for staff. So that's my email address. So I'm very happy to be in touch with people. So yeah, please do follow up if you need anything more information wise. Okay. Bye everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye.